Well, hello everyone. This is Jason Zaidema from NAMMA, the North American Maritime Ministry Association. I'm on the line today with Niels Alland and Robert Hahn, who are both from the West Gulf Maritime Association. And I'm so glad that there's a good group of you on the call right now. I think we'll have 25 or so by the time we have everybody joining us today. So welcome to Niels and to Robert. So
glad to be here. Thank you.
I'd like to just say a few brief opening words, and then I want to hand it over to Niels and Robert to say a bit about WGMA and a bit about the situation of the impacts of coronavirus on the Gulf Coast. But I want to really reserve the bulk of our time this afternoon from hearing from you. And in order to hear from you on this system, on this webinar system, I need to be able to unmute you. I have the power to unmute you, but in order to unmute you, you need to raise your hand so that I know that you actually want to say something or ask a question. And so just as a brief overview, if on your control panel, you'll see there's a little microphone symbol that's probably red right now. After that, there's a little hand. And if you can click that little hand, just now, click it so that you put the little hand up and then put it back down. There's a little hand, excellent. I see so many of you putting it up and putting it down. So if you can all put your hands up and put them down. So that's a way of signaling to me that you want to say something, and we'll come back to you in just a few moments. Then beside it, there's also a question box. So if you have a question for me or for Niels or for Robert, there's a way of asking a question. So underneath the questions, if anyone wants to go ahead, you can even just ask a question already, and I'll see the question ping up, and you can ask them now, and we'll save questions for a bit later. But you can ask the question at any time. It's better if you ask sooner rather than later. That way we have those questions lined up. So a few words of introduction now. As we all know, this is a pretty unprecedented times, very difficult time for many since the end of last year when the virus was first known in China until now. It seems like a long time ago. All of us, I think, have been living quite a different life, and it's difficult for us. But many of us get to stay home with our families, are close to our loved ones. But we work for those who are very far away from their families, and seafarers are certainly so important at this time. And yet, seafarers are experiencing quite important challenges in the last number of months. We're going to talk about in just a few moments issues of repatriation, crew change, border closures, certificate expirations, PPE, no new jobs. All of these things add up to fatigue, stress, frustration, social isolation, and these are things that we'd like to drill down into in the coming minutes. Well, to help us get a sense of the size of these issues, I've invited Niels and Robert to this conversation. For some of you, you might know Niels and Robert very well, but for others, this might be your first chance to meet them. The West Gulf Maritime Association is a great friend of NAMMA, but specifically it's because of these men and other folks at WGMA. It's not just a friendly organization, impersonal organization, but very specifically, these people make the WGMA so friendly toward us. And thank you, Niels. Thank you, Robert, for all that you do for seafarers' welfare in your own region, but then around North America as well. So, Neil, starting off, could you give us a sense, what is the WGMA, and why do you have a sort of a front row seat on managing some of the issues dealing with the coronavirus in your region?
Well, thank you, Jason, for that very kind introduction. And Robert and I are very supportive of the Seafarers Center. Just a little bit of update. Our offices are domiciled in Houston, but our geographic scope is from Lake Charles, Louisiana, south to Brownsville. We also go by the acronym WGMA, West Gulf Maritime Association. Robert and I do our best to promote the activities of the various seafarer center in our region. We support NAMMA. We also financially support as possible in all of the areas that we have representation. We really value and appreciate the services that the seafarer centers provide. Jason was kind enough to kind of give a roster of who was going to be on this call. Many of the people I know for many years, and I know the great work that they do hands-on. Other names I'm very aware of. Others I haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet, but yes, we're very proud to be here. The West Gulf Maritime Association, we trace our roots back to the 1960s, mid-1960s. We have basically two divisions. One is we represent management and collective bargaining with the ILA. All the longshoremen in Texas and parts of Louisiana get paid through our through our payroll system. We also provide safety and security training. The other division, other part of West Gulf Maritime Association is the Maritime Affairs Group, which Robert and I manage. And there we're advocates for ship owners, ship agents, and maritime stakeholders. Our membership includes ship owners, ship agents, port authorities, and maritime stakeholders. But in our advocacy work, I'm proud to say that at various times we've been able to help the seafarers centers and their activities. That is sort of a high-level overview of the West Gulf Maritime Association, and I'm very fortunate to have on my staff Robert Hahn, who's our director, who is almost 40 years agency experience and has volunteered his time and efforts with local Seafarer Center, and I think serves on the board there at the Houston Seafarer Center. So maybe Robert, you could say a few words.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is I would say, an unprecedented situation that we're facing across our region and around the world. And so we're taking these problems as they come. We can't solve them all, but so far I've had very good dialogue going with Coast Guard and Customs to try to facilitate working with the seafarers as much as they possibly can. So I think anything that comes up, we take it to them and explain the situation. They tell us what they can do, what they can't do, and we just take each situation as they come. Overall, I think this is going to be a long, drawn-out situation, many more months. I wish I could say otherwise, but I think that's what it's going to be. Jason?
So, Robert, can you Robert, could you give us what are some of the sort of the two or three most challenging problems right now in terms of seafarers that you're seeing in either directly in Houston or throughout your region or throughout the Gulf Coast, as far as you can see?
Well, can you hear me all right, by the way?
Yeah.
Okay, because I kept you on the speaker. Well, CBP has not stopped repatriations or crew changes. I think what we're seeing is difficulty in people getting out of their countries where they're coming from to try to join a ship. But CBP has said they would facilitate all crew changes. Any restrictions that have been put in place on immigration, things like that, do not affect crew changes. All the seafarers are detained on board automatically, and that's even if they're healthy. And that's as much to protect the seafarers as it is to protect the shore personnel that might be interfacing with the ships. Everyone that's going on board is supposed to be wearing PPE. Again, that's not to stop them from getting the virus. It's just to, if in case they are infected, it would stop them from spreading it to someone else. CBP has also said that they would facilitate, I see on your key problems here, they would facilitate renewal of passports. Someone has a passport about to expire or has expired before they come in. As long as they have a valid visa, then they would let them come ashore under a parole situation to get a passport renewal. Now, of course, you can be very limited on where you can do that anyway, depending on the consulates. We've seen some incidents down in Corpus Christi that comes to mind where a crew member was coming off the ship just to go to the doctor because CBP's allowing that regular doctor visit, not necessarily someone who thinks they has coronavirus, but they just need to go see a doctor or a dentist. And transportation pulls up and they see a crew member coming off the ship, and immediately everybody goes, oh, they got coronavirus. Everybody's detained on board. They must have coronavirus because they're going ashore. And so they've asked that anytime someone comes off a ship that they be notified so that everyone can be aware of what's going on. And that's been passed around to the terminals, all private terminals, port authorities to communicate. Tell people you got a crew member coming off, why he's coming off. And I'm not aware of any, other than the cruise ships, I'm not aware of any cargo vessels that have had a COVID-19 case. So it appears to be working okay.
Niels, I think you wanted.
Other than the stress of being detained on board and not having any end in sight, I think everyone's doing as much as they possibly can to get through this.
Niels, I think you wanted to give a follow-up comment.
Yes, and by the way, Robert, excellent overview, well stated. You know, a lot of credit is given in the media for the first responders for what they're doing, but I also think the seafarers are going over and above to do their jobs. I think the Seafarer Center personnel, ministers, volunteers are stepping up and going the extra to go down to the docks. They can't go aboard necessarily, but they can leave things. They're available to answer, help people remotely. So I'd like to commend the ministry and the service of the Seafarer Center. Thank you very much. This is a very difficult time indeed, and that I have a certain level of anxiety for the Seafarer Center, and maybe on this call we could talk about that, in that, you know, with the crews not being able to directly go to the facilities, will the ship owners still want to pay the fees? Are they facing financial pressures? So many of the not-for-profits that I serve on boards for are having significant revenue shortfalls and challenges. I don't know if anybody has tried to apply for these small business loans. I know 2 museums that were successful in getting those. Fundraisers, big events that you depend on to bring in revenue to keep your operations going. Across the board, those are being pushed back from the spring, summer. September, October, November is already getting exceedingly crowded. We have our daily industry update report. We list events. I know of 2 conferences that were using the same hotel different times of the year, and their compromise was our conference will be Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Yours can be Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. There's just going to be X number of dollars available in the market. If there's a thing I could say to you, if you have an event, please save the date announcements early. Try to communicate with the local industry to protect that date for your event this fall. And be mindful that there's going to be a really crowded fundraising events. And Robert, of course, is working with the local Houston Seafarer Center on a virtual event, but you got to get creative and proactive. So those are just some of the other comments I wanted to add.
Well, this allows us to, I think that's a fine tee up from both of you, tee up to hear from the folks on the call. And it's not to lessen the role of Niels and Robert here. They're here to share. But I think as well that they're here to listen, and we really want to hear now from the folks on the call. And it's important for them at the WGMA to be able to pass back to those they deal with in Coast Guard and industry. And I just wanted to share, just previous to this conversation today, I got a very nice email from Admiral Netto, the commander of the 8th Coast Guard District, where he was pleased to receive information on our work, and he wrote me to say, "I pray that you and all those who serve the spiritual needs of seafarers are kept safe." That's Admiral Netto, the commander of the 8th Coast Guard District. Well, now I want to turn it over to you who are on the call. And as I said, if you'd like to, if you have something to share, and I'd love to hear anyone who has just a sort of an update from their own local port. What are you doing? What's still available? What services can you provide? What are your key challenges? Just keeping it short and sweet, a minute or two. I'd love to hear from you. So if you put up your hand, then I can recognize you, and then can open up the line. So we'll start with Sharon Emerson down in Corpus Christi. Hello, Sharon. Go ahead. Hello, Sharon. Are you there, Sharon? I cannot hear you. Your microphone, I think, is on, but I cannot hear you. I'll come back to you in just a moment. Anyone else have something to say or something to share? Bobby Fuller, I just saw your hand up. Bobby Fuller, are you on the line?
I'm on the line.
Hi, Bobby. How are you?
Doing well, doing real well. Things are pretty tight in Freeport, I will tell you. Still plenty of ships coming in and coming out. We have used this time to reach out to the ship agents and to the pilot's office. We started out with a letter, a card to the pilots that they could include with their pilot book when they boarded the ship, to let the seafarers know our number and how they could reach us, what kinds of things that we could do, as far as maybe even supplying phone cards to the ship, or SIM cards. In exchanging there at the gangway, that's still going on to some degree. We found out that through our doing it with the pilots that we had some success, but then we also updated our agents list and got email addresses for all of them, and recently sent out a letter from Texas Port Ministry to all the agents, and I received a really nice response from a ship. And what had happened is the agent had sent his ship our letter, and his response back about us praying for them and looking for ways to meet their needs was very positive. So that's some of the things that are going on. It's also enhanced, surprisingly, sometimes with terminals. Seafarer Center is not so important. You know, if we know who you are, we know what you do, we let you do what you do. But in trying to sometimes communicate well with our terminals is not always easy. We're not as important sometimes as some of the other things of the day. But in this particular case, we have found each of our terminal representatives to be very helpful, and it's improved communications. So we've seen improved communications with the terminals, improved communications with the agents, and we're just looking for the other opportunities for ministry that we can enhance during the time. And then also looking for how it might change the way we do things day to day as we come out of this.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
And
Whoops, I muted you too quick. Sorry, Bobby, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Bobby.
That's okay. I just wanted to thank Niels and Robert so much, WGMA, for their support and opening doors sometimes for us in ways that they'll never know. So we really appreciate them, appreciate their support of our banquets, things like that. You guys are great.
Coming back at you.
Thank you so much, Bobby Fuller from Freeport. If you want to put up your hand, if you have anything to add. So next would be Jim Lewis, if you could introduce yourself, where you're from. Go ahead.
Good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, this is Jim Lewis. I'm the operations manager at the Galveston Seafarer Center. I'm a partner in here with our community affairs or community relations manager, Denise Hightower Aguilar. And we're experiencing a lot of the same things that everyone else is talking about, as far as obviously no foot traffic coming into the center. But one of the things that Denise has done a really nice job with is we have distributed our WhatsApp address to the folks that come in off the 5 different cruise ships. And so we've stayed in contact with a good many of the crew members on these cruise ships through the WhatsApp feature, and been to listen to a lot of their questions and their apprehensions, and trying to keep them settled down as much as we can, letting them know that we're here for them, especially once the cruising industry opens back up again. Some of the other things we've been doing, we're obviously still accepting parcels and mail, and then as the ship comes into port, I'm delivering that to the ships via their port agents, and of course packages go through a litany of security protocol. It takes a couple of days for the crew member to get their packages, but they are sending me emails letting me know they're getting their things. So we're able to continue to provide that service to these folks as they come in. And lastly, just to share with everybody, we've been using this downtime to renovate the center. There's been a lot of work that's been done. I've got a volunteer that comes in daily, and between the two of us, we've taken this center from floor to ceiling, wall to wall, and either cleaned it or rebuilt it. And we're looking forward to being able to show off our hard work when we can open the doors again.
That's great to hear. I have a follow-up question actually for you, Jim, and this is maybe something Robert can follow up on as well. So we heard from Bobby a few moments ago that his relationships have improved actually with some of the terminals. I'm wondering, you just mentioned about you have to work with those agents, the ship agents, et cetera, to get the packages to the ships. Have you sensed any sort of improvement in those relationships with the folks from the company, especially like ship agents or others working for the ships?
Well, to be honest with you, I'm fairly new to this position. I've only been here about 3 months, so I'm still building a relationship with these folks. And to the short time I've been here, these 90-something days, I've had a very good relationship with these folks. And so I'm not going to tell you it's got any better. It certainly hasn't gotten any worse. Does that answer your question?
It's a wonderful time to sort of a steep learning curve, a good learning curve, a time to jump in with both your feet for sure. But it's
no doubt.
So thank you very much. Does anyone else have a comment or a question? So there's been a couple questions from David Wells, and I can ask some of those questions. But David, I'd love to get you on the line. David, you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, I was going to let you ask them when you mentioned them, but since you put me on, I like to talk. The people. I'm curious because I've never, I hope you're just meaning mask, because I've never gone on ships the last 2 weeks and no one said anything about anything else. Is that what you're talking about? So
yeah, the questions about PPE, and maybe Robert or Niels, if you've heard from either other agents or other inspectors or anyone else, what kind of PPE would ship visitors be recommended or required to wear at this time, besides obviously the safety stuff, the helmets and vests, etc., normal stuff? But is there anything like either masks or gloves or whatnot that you have heard is either recommended or not recommended?
Well, I'll go first. The local jurisdictions have made mandates. For example, we're in Harris County, and our county judge announced yesterday, effective Monday, anybody in public needs to wear a facial mask. Now, that can be just a cloth mask, or they're saying also that the high-end masks that would be used in, say, an emergency room or medical hospital, they want to save those for that sector. but some of it may be impacted on what the local regulations are. There's a drive here in Houston to collect PPE for the longshoremen. They don't have enough of that. So I don't have any specifics other than region by region, local jurisdictions may require certain things, but I can also, from a personal experience, everywhere I go, if you're wearing a mask, people seem to be more relaxed and more comfortable than if you walk in and they're wearing them. So I think it's one, for your own safety, and two, out of courtesy, make people feel more relaxed if you have the mask. And I'd also like to point out that there's been some pilot groups that we've read about that have donated masks to different groups. So I think the community is trying to respond in that way.
Thank you so much, David. If I could ask you, a follow-up question. Can you give us just a thumbnail sketch of what kind of visiting that you've been doing in the last few days, and what kind of reaction you've been having from the sort of gangway style visits that you're doing?
Actually, it's been much pleasantly. I've been pleasantly surprised, because since the 9th of this month, we've gone into going all the way up the gangway, and no problem with that. And about a third of the ships have even let me and wanted me to go further. And I've gone either in the control room or the smoking room, wherever they directed me. Personally, I'd always wear a mask, and I feel a bit uncomfortable going further, but I will go further if they would like me to. And they often, it's about a third of them that would. About the other 2/3, they're still very anxious, and they are even nervous at the gangway. And I totally understand that. We are also delivering packages, as was mentioned, and they really appreciate when they can send orders and have us deliver them, the packages, to the ship. The other thing is, they've contacted me with WhatsApp as well. I had never thought to run that through our center. I think it might be good if we were with Line and Viper and WhatsApp and several of those communicating links, because seafarers will really use those. But I find on the ship that they still want us there. Every ship is different. There are some that I find that they are really seem uptight, and I can understand that. And some that they hardly even care about the corona stuff. Well, they care, but they're more relaxed with it. Still, I think we as chaplains must be really careful and extra cautious, and I try to do that.
Well, thank you very much, David, for those comments. A follow-up comment, maybe to Niels or to Robert. We have a question from Karen Parsons down in Galveston. Karen says she was on the docks in Galveston Monday and noticed that none of the longshoremen had any masks on. That Galveston County will not require masks. Will the longshoremen in Galveston wear them even if they're not required? She asks. Wondering if you have a comment. Either of you have a comment on that question?
Do you want to go, Robert, or you want me to?
The only thing I can comment on is that the Galveston County judge has declared he will not put such an order out like the Harris County judge, because he considers it to be illegal. So they're not going to force people to wear masks. There were a couple of cases with longshoremen in the Houston area that were coronavirus was positive, and that's what prompted everybody to take notice up here. We had to close down one of the container terminals for an evening and set up temperature testing of everybody coming in, that type of thing. So they got a rude awakening, I guess you'd say, and they decided to do something about it. So And I think it's also been handed down from national headquarters, ILA national headquarters, that they want their people to be wearing PPE. I think they've even appealed directly to the president, asking help in getting PPE. So they want to protect their people. I will say, though, that Customs has told me there is no requirement that the ship's crew wear PPE. In fact, they're pretty sure that most of the ships don't have that much of it, so they would quickly run out. There's no requirement. The inspectors that are boarding the ships are wearing it, but again, that's most of this, like a cloth mask or a paper mask, is not going to stop the bug anyway. It's only to stop if you cough or sneeze or talk. When you talk, you might spit a little bit. So if you're contagious, you're going to be spreading it all around to everyone else. So that's really to protect other people. What's PPE, and it reminds you not to touch your face with your hands that might be dirty. So that's the main reason for it.
Just to add to it, you know, physical hard work where you're deep breathing, moving around, dirty environment. I don't think a lot of the longshoremen will voluntarily want to wear it unless it's mandated either by a local jurisdiction or by their senior management. That's a broad-based statement. Not all of them will take that position, but one, the availability of the mask, two, the type of stuff makes it difficult to want to wear a mask and do that kind of physically intensive work. So those factors play into it too.
Let's move a little.
Comment about,
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
About what David said, there's no restriction for people to go on board the ships. So what he's doing is fully permitted. You know, there's no restrictions whatsoever. It's really up to the ship. If they want to invite you on board and you feel comfortable going on board, then by all means, go ahead. I will say that back at the beginning of this, about 3 weeks to maybe a month ago, one of the senior CBP chiefs in Houston was telling me that they went down to board a ship, and when they got to the top of the gangway, every one of the ship's crew was wearing a mask. And they were immediately, oh no, if somebody's sick on board, they thought they were walking into an infested ship. So it really, and the ship's crew said, no, we just want to put you at ease. So, you know, it comes down to communication again, doesn't it? Go ahead.
Jason?
Yeah.
Jason, about 3 weeks ago, or I'm not sure, Robert, when it was, but we saw some media coverage about 2 longshoremen in New Orleans, ILA, that passed away. And if maybe somebody on the call from New Orleans has some feedback, if after that happened, did the longshoremen start wearing masks down there? I'm just curious if that had an impact.
You took the words out of, you were thinking the same thing. I wanted to hop over to New Orleans anyways. I'm wondering if there's anyone on the call, from New Orleans who has any follow-up on that particular incident, or if anyone from New Orleans would like to say anything about what's being offered in New Orleans or in the area, in one of the ports of that area as well. Either Stephen McKinney or Gina Sabine or anyone else would like to give us an update on New Orleans. You can put your little hand up and I can recognize you. Anyone? Stephen McKinney. Go ahead, Stephen.
Hey, good afternoon. So I can tell you limited information because we are very limited in what we can do right now. Since we are such an epicenter of the virus, we've stayed out of the port a lot. Most of what we've done has been electronic. Of course, we did have the 2 longshoremen that passed away. We got word of that. I don't know if that really affected how they're wearing PPE on the port. I do know that they started doing temperature checks as people go in and out of the port. Gina could probably tell you a little bit more. She was the last one that was actually on the port. She had to go by Harbor Police. We were just dropping off a basket of goodies for them to let them know, encourage them. But we've been very limited in what we can do. We haven't been to any ships, even gangways, just because we don't want to be responsible for bringing the virus to any ships right now. We are delivering packages to some of the cruise ships that will allow us to still do that. But again, that's been very limited. Even some of the ships won't even accept packages from us. And the ones that do, they kind of accept them on the dock and then they put them in quarantine before they bring them on the ship.
Stephen, is there any sense of timings given by any officials in your area? Is this a question of weeks before maybe things change, or are you still looking at months?
What we're hearing from the mayor right now is, I think, mid-May.
And as far as like services that you can provide, are there any, like before mid-May, is there anything more that you could do, or basically from now until mid-May, you're going to be doing the same thing as you're doing now?
Well, we continue to assess the situation. Of course, in an emergency, we can go on the port. We have access. We've just been restricting ourselves as much as possible. And we haven't had any requests from any ships either, which, you know, all the seafarers know that they're in a hot spot for the virus as well. They're not wanting us to come on board right now. But if something came up where we needed to go onto the port earlier, we could definitely do that. Right now, we're just manning our center with a skeleton crew. There's one person at the ministry center each day to be able to accept mail, packages, phone calls, and any ministry opportunity that may arise, an emergency or whatever. We're still available, and just continue to assess. So even before mid-May, if we needed to go to the port, we could. We're just trying not to keep everybody safe, just out of an abundance of caution.
Thank you so much, Stephen, for those comments. I see on our call that we have Chaplain Tom Rhodes and also Mark Nesselhut from Seamen's Church Institute. I'm wondering if either Tom or Mark, you could comment on the river chaplains, what some of the river chaplains are doing, and how it might be the same or different than what you're hearing from the other chaplains. Either Mark or Tom, if you want to raise your hands. I'm putting you on the spot, but that's my job. If you could raise your hand, if you're listening, Tom Rhodes or Mark Nesselhut. Yes, Mark. Hello, Mark. Welcome to the call. Could you give us an update, on what the river chaplains might be doing?
Sure, Jason. I was actually calling to suggest that Tom Rhodes give you that update because he's actually on the scene, and I am outside of Philadelphia right now, listening in on this call because it's more convenient for me to be on this call than tomorrow's East Coast call. But if Tom's on, I know Tom has had to make some difficult decisions about when to be physically present versus when to do sort of virtual boat visits and things, at least for the towboat fleet. So Tom, I am encouraging you to speak up right now.
Yeah, he's got to raise his hand. I don't want to put him on the spot if he's maybe he stepped away from his phone and he doesn't know that he's going to be on the line. So we can circle back in just a moment, but you can. There, Tom. Okay, Tom is opening his mic now, so I'll keep you open, Mark. I'll keep your mic open, and if you want to add something after Tom says something. But Tom, you're also live now. Hello, Tom.
Okay. I'm technically challenged with the GoToWebinar. So we assess each. We're basically first responding to critical incidents. I don't know I don't know anything about Blue Water Ministry, honestly. I'm just learning today, but we are case by case basis, and depending on where, So what's different between rivers and ports is you guys are located, we're mobile. And so we don't like cover a port, we cover the whole thing. And we have river chaplains all along the waterways that we've recruited. And so what goes into, we are not doing our normal visitation. We are not, it's, you know, companies don't want us to be getting on their boats during this time. We are not essential personnel. In the event of a critical incident, we've had about 4 in the last month and a half. And early on, we responded to one. I don't know if I'd do it again because I was on quarantine for 14 days after I'd gotten off a plane for a family emergency, and the chaplain I sent had been Mardi Gras all the way, and so as I look back on it, I'm not sure that was best. We had another incident that we decided to try to do phone call ministry and didn't. A lot of times we just don't get the information from the leadership of the companies to do our best thing. And in this case, we didn't. And then we had another incident Sunday that was bad enough that with this particular situation, it was a pretty confined crew. They were pretty local. Had been on for 2 weeks, and so we decided it was the best practice to go ahead and be on the scene. And one of our NAMMA, John Archer, actually was there before I was, which I really appreciated. And so, you know, it's case by case. We're mostly staying home and doing videos. We've been trying to work on more mariner wellness side as opposed to emergency response, and getting some wellness circles going along shoreside staff, and then hoping to reach the mariner. So we've kind of taken this opportunity to assess and revamp our ministry. We have about 30,000 mariners that we're trying to serve along our waterways, and we can't visit them due to numbers. And so this has been a blessing in that it's pushed forward our audio video capacities, phone just like it is right now, you know, what we're doing. And so I think in the end, after this is over, we will be a both and organization that's utilizing video conferencing more often and reaching more mariners. So that's kind of what we're doing. You know, just hoping that you know, people don't get killed out here, so that we have to go do an incident. I don't know. Does blue water respond to death and injury often? I mean, that's kind of what our thing is along the waterways. I don't know what the average per month is. You know, you'll have some months or maybe nothing, and then you'll have 4 in a row that are kind of close together. But that's kind of our ministry, is we are known for critical incident stress management. All our chaplains are trained in that, and that's what the towing companies love to use us for, is trying to mitigate the future implications of trauma.
And Jason, let me just jump in for a minute if I can.
Yeah.
So what the threshold that we have to make a decision now is that Tom Kempton, who's the senior river chaplain, who's based out of Paducah, and then there are 35 river chaplain associates, I think, roughly around that number. Maybe it's more now. In sort of the current COVID-19 scenario, we're having to make case-by-case decisions. So Sunday morning, the decision was to allow Tom to travel several hours to get to the crew that was remaining on a ship after a death by suicide on the boat. So it's those kinds of responses when we could say a critical incident. it usually involves a death of a mariner.
It's heartbreaking to hear about, and also encouraging to hear there are people responding. Thank you so much, Mark and Tom, for those comments. And actually, Tom just mentioned the relationship with another NAMMA person, and I'm wondering if he might make a comment now. So over in mobile, John Archer, I'm wondering if you want to put up your hand, if you have anything that you'd like to add or say. John, go ahead. Can you tell us what's going on in Mobile and what you're able to do, and what are some of the challenges or joys that you're finding? John, we cannot hear you. I think you're open, but I can't hear you somehow. Go ahead, John.
Sorry, the headset wasn't working for the other side. Yeah, in Mobile right now, like others, I guess New Orleans, we're allowed into the port, but the two main ministries, ourselves and international ministries, have not been going out. That was internally decided by each of us independently. But the port is open and available. They're checking temperatures of all that go into the port. I'd say, Jason, one of the biggest things I'm seeing right now has been, gee, we're using technology like never before, and communications has been critical. So the things that you're doing is keeping me, one, from going crazy, but it's also keeping us abreast of what others are doing. And I also had, I'm an all-volunteer staff, and one of my staff in an email back and forth said, we'd really like to just get together and talk. And by that, we set up a go-to meeting and got at least half of the crew together because the others couldn't figure it out. But it was a way of staying in touch with one another. We've used the time to stay in touch with the other ministries and had a good meeting. Terrible situation Sunday, but going over to Pascagoula nearby, I got a call through one of my board members, if you will, asking for help to go out, and got to work with Tom. And so we're seeing this, the communications is just so important. Got feedback from my own group that the same frustration that I'm hearing from other ministries and other ports is, gee, is there something we can do? And so in the last week, I guess we were running into Walmart's buying excess Easter candy that didn't sell. And we've started making some deliveries to different ships, just to kind of say, and it was something, Jason, one of the groups you had put out said, thank you for what you do, seafarers. We are still here. And again, I stressed our Facebook page and had some fruit from that late just today, as a matter of fact, on two crew members independently that reached out looking for help. One that was going to be in port much longer. It's an Airbus delivery that comes in, and they're usually in 12 to 24 hours and out, but they're here for another week. We brought out a wireless to them. Crew reacted. It was a little strange. It was my first time out. One of the crew members who did not have a mask went running back behind his podium and made me stay at the distance. But they were very thankful and for getting the wireless to be able to communicate with home. Another vessel had asked for some shopping services, and I hate shopping, but spent a couple hours in Walmart, and I got a very nice thank you back. And their comment was, this is becoming more and more difficult for us as we go from port to port, which is getting access, for that personal supply. And this vessel's leaving for England this afternoon, so they're going to have another couple of weeks out at sea. So a lot of cookies and chips and some necessities along with it were delivered to them. So it's kind of evolving as we go, but like some of the others have said, seeing we're going to have to work on technology, all of us, to maybe improve how we're providing services.
Thank you very much, John, for those comments and for the encouragement as well. if we keep on going around the coast, I'm wondering, we have also some folks from Florida, including Steve Finnessy, Rich Lumen, and I think there's some others. Either Steve or Rich, if you wanted to put up your hand, it'd be great to hear from either Port Tampa or Port Manatee, what services that you're providing and where your joys and challenges are. Either Steve or Rich. Richard, if you want to put up your hand, I can recognize you and open the microphone. Or if anyone else has a comment. Okay, there's Steve. Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, good afternoon. So here in Tampa, we are continuing with the cargo ship visits. Primarily, the only service we're really offering them is to take them the free Wi-Fi hotspots so they can have Wi-Fi while they're here in port. Obviously not doing any transportation because crew members are typically not allowed off the ship. We don't spend a lot of time on the ships, basically just dropping off the Wi-Fi, kind of a gangway check on crew welfare. And then for the cruise ships, we still have a significant parcel delivery service going. In this month of April, we've delivered over 1,000 parcels to the 4 various cruise ships that we have working out of Tampa. So that has actually changed into a bit of a more labor-intensive project than what we had before, because the crew members can no longer come to us and pick up the packages. We have to take them to the ship. So it is more labor intensive, but I've gotten so much feedback from the crew members on how that affects their morale. Just being able to receive a parcel that they've ordered. And something else that I've really noticed in the last couple of weeks is I've received calls from people in Michigan and North Carolina, a couple other states, of people that have gone on cruises and developed a close relationship with crew members and stayed in touch with them over social media, that are sending care packages to the seafarers. In fact, yesterday I had a lady from Georgia that drove to Tampa from Georgia to deliver a care package for one of the crew members on the Carnival Legend, which I delivered there today. So that is really encouraging to me anyway, to see others around the country engaging in seafarers' welfare. We anticipate the work to lighten up a little bit here, because yesterday we learned that both of our Carnival cruise ships are going to be relocating to the Bahamas to lay up. So we will lose access to them. But we're just serving them as we can. And really feel like this has also opened up great opportunity to serve the port community itself, with port workers and security guards and that. We've had great opportunity to serve them in ways we've never had before.
Thank you, Steve, for those comments. It's so encouraging. It warms your heart to hear some of those stories. It makes it all worth it. Just a real tough slog, but then someone comes for such a a long period, a long drive. You would think some of these care packages, you'd think sort of the holy waste of gas, where you have to drive for so long just to drop off a care package. You could get someone to get it local, but it's just so meaningful when people go above and beyond the call of duty. So thanks for sharing that story. Sharon Emerson, you were one of the first, and I'm just wondering, before our hour is up, if you want to raise your hand again, we'll see if your mic is working again. Sharon, are you still available? Sharon in Corpus Christi, are you there? Somehow I think your mic is not working. I'm sorry, can't hear you. If you want, Sharon, if you want to put something in the questions, I can relay it on if you want to put something in the questions. Unfortunately, your mic is not working. So we're coming up against the end of our hour. And just before you leave, I'd like to share just a few more slides that of information that could be useful to you as you're going forward. So I've shared already sort of some of the key issues, and here's some of the things that NAMMA has been doing with ICMA and many of you in our local partners. So each week in my role with ICMA, I'm on 2 large international telephone calls on Tuesdays and on Thursdays. So both are convened by the International Chamber of Shipping and with the ITF and SIU. On both calls, David Heindel from the Seafarers International Union represents those internationally. Then on the Tuesday call, they happen with the International Maritime Health Association, with a few other ICMA members, with ISWAN, Seafarers UK, and others. And then on Thursday, with various of the United Nations organizations, the WHO, IMO, ILO, are on those calls. And a lot of those calls are the sort of the highest level calls to talk about ways to put together documentation that can be pushed out to governments, especially with all the issues that I mentioned, certificates and health screenings, crew changes, trying to figure out ways to get through the challenges that we have. A really encouraging one, this one organized by NAMMA's assistant, Kevin Walker. Each Tuesday now, there's a prayer time, 15-minute prayer time. If you haven't been joining those, please do sign up for those. It's really, really great. We're pretty active on Facebook. Our web magazine, the Murray Report, has new articles regularly. Just today, Kevin Walker came out with an article on the Houston International Seafarers Center, a great article. Thanks to the WGMA for sharing that in their daily newsletter. We have some training opportunities via Murray Training, which is our training platform, some new courses there, and a number of them which are free right now for our members, but also our partners. They're online courses on all sorts of seafarers welfare things. There's also some new training, there's some new communication platforms that are launching. With the Mission to Seafarers this week, ICMA and NAMMA launched Chat to a Chaplain. If you go to NAMMA's webpage or ICMA's webpage, you'll see on the bottom corner a little chat button, and that goes directly to me and to a team of 24 other people in time zones around the world. And we've been chatting with seafarers. I've had a number of chats directly from an app on my smartphone already. It's a limited number of chaplains. It's a fairly expensive system, but it's already working quite well. Similarly, Sailor Society has a chat feature. The German Seamen's Mission has made one. The Danish Church has made one. A number of local ministries have made local apps that can connect directly to their ministries. And all of you indeed are pushing things out on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, etc., etc., etc. And I encourage you in that. If you have any questions about how to make that jump into digital platforms, I'm no master or anything, but I'll give you any assistance I can give, any advice I can give. Usually the advice I can give is just sharing the wisdom that all of you are already doing, sharing some best practice with you. Funding is a big question. Niels has already talked about this. If you want more information about federal, state, local funding, just drop me a line and I'll connect you to those in the group that have the best information. The ITF Seafarers Trust has launched £1 million fund. You can apply for that. TK Foundation also has funding. All of these are made for you. You should be applying for these. If you are doing things and you're affected by coronavirus, apply for this money. If you see specific seafarers who have specific needs, you can apply on their behalf and apply for the Seafarers Emergency Fund. Typically, it's up to $5,000, but they're actually accepting grants for higher than that. Apply now. They have money. They would really like to be able to turn over fast some of this funding. So please do apply for it. If you have any questions, reach out to me. And finally, I'm here. I can't go anywhere. And I'm in the office. Drop me a line. I'm very happy to speak with you at any time. Give me a call or write me an email. I'm very happy to be of service to you. So on behalf of NAMMA, thank you for being on this call. Thank you to Niels and to Robert for speaking, but especially for listening. Being here and just listening to us is an encouragement to us to know that somebody's listening and that you can be that conduit towards the industry, and that industry and government and other folks are listening to our cause, I think is really important. So thank you, Niels and Robert. So that brings us up against our time, and I wish you a great day. Maybe we'll do this again in the coming weeks. Stay in touch. Thank you, and God bless. Thank you, everyone.